Howdy, folks. Happy Thursday. We have lots to discuss today. We have Joe Yerdon joining us. Welcome, Joe, again to the show. We'll start with some pre-show stuff, and I want to get Joe's feedback on this because he's on the Buffalo scene. I find it rather hilarious, the news that came out yesterday. Tim Graham in The Athletic wrote about this. Chris Brown, who is longtime Bills reporter, worked for WGR, now working for the Bills website. He was suspended by the team for reporting on the team. And specifically, he revealed what they were doing in terms of alignments in practice, like who's playing tackle, who's playing guard, what wide receiver is lining up inside or outside. This is apparently considered proprietary information from the Bills. They didn't want it getting out there. Chris Brown hosts a show on WGR, the local radio station, and talked about it. I think it was with Steve Tasker, and talked about the different alignments. Joe, that's what the show is for. If you can't talk about that, what the hell is the point of the friggin' show? Yeah,
it seems really goofy, and it's to me it smacks of the Bills and I guess the NFL by proxy, putting a head on a pike to show that they mean business as far as keeping all of this information that is basic information that fans want to know. Fans want to know about the competition in camp. They want to know where these guys are setting up. I mean, it's not like they're giving away secret plays or hidden plays or any of this kind of stuff. I mean, Chris works for the Bills. The radio show he's on is One Bills Live. That's the team. The team pays for that airtime to have a radio show, and he's the guy that heads it up. And it's tone deaf, and the Bills are taking a lot of heat for it, which they should.
Yes.
But it's the NFL, and every team, every city is having these same problems where. There's parts of practice that you cannot tweet, you cannot share information about. Like Bills had a whole full intra-squad practice today, or scrimmage, and it was just people like scribbling down their own notes, taking down their own stats, trying to figure out who ran for what, who threw, how many yards Josh Allen threw for. Like what are we doing here? Like this is stupid to keep this all a big secret, because this is the stuff the fans want to hear about. The fans want to know about this and how guys are doing. And if they can't handle the heat from the fans, if guys aren't performing well, or some guys are performing better than others that maybe should be better, oh my God! Like,
here's a newsflash, though, Joe. If this were a regular year and they were preseason, we would know in preseason anyhow what they're doing. They may not show us all the plays, but we would know where guys are playing and what they're playing and how they're playing. Like, this is just nonsense.
Yeah, I think it talks as much about the NFL as it does about the Pagulas, because there was an example, I think it was a year or two ago, where John Murphy, who's the play-by-play announcer for the Bills, he used to do, I think it was the same show, but he did a show on GR where he commented on the Sabres firing Phil Housley and that they may have been too quick to pull the trigger, and he got suspended for criticizing the organization. The thin skin of the Pagulas is unbelievable.
Well, I mean, Russ said what I was going to say, but I'll add one more layer on it, right? Normally you'd have camps being open. You normally would have scrimmages in those camps being open, which means you'd have fans watching that and seeing what's going on anyway, right? So you're not revealing trade secrets here. Everybody's going to know this. Everybody's going to figure out what's going on here, right? This year is a little bit different in aberration because you don't have the fan base that's showing up to games. You don't have the preseason games. Maybe they think they'll have an advantage by doing it, but look, if you want to keep interest in your team, just having puff pieces on players isn't going to do enough to keep fans interested.
No, nobody's going to go to the website.
This is the nuts and bolts that people want to kind of know about, and it's not like you're revealing anything that's a major secret that's not going to be out there anyway.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, I don't really understand what's proprietary information or not, because when I go to a morning skate and you go to a morning skate, we put out the lines for the teams. Okay, that gives a little bit of insight to the other team of what the lines are, but they have people sitting in the stands anyway, so they're getting that information anyway. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and this is I think this is the slippery slope that I think all of us worry about in media when it comes to everything being shut off. I mean, practices are basically no-go zones for reporting right now because everything's in the bubble. There's hardly any reporters there in the first place. But teams hate it when we're putting out the power play formations and how they're setting up things in front and how they're doing that, because it gets dissected. It gets dissected by us, gets dissected by fans, especially if it's not going well. We know all about that in Buffalo here, obviously, because you have guys like you have on the power play here. They should probably score more often than they do, and when they don't, you could tell on Ralph Kruger's face all season that it was just like, yeah, I know special teams are an easy thing to pick on. Yeah, they are when they're bad.
Well, I
make them less bad.
I think what's bad here is I think the NFL thinks they're a league that could just create their own PR and fans should just go with that, where every other sport doesn't believe that, and they know. And look, I mean, as an example, we all look at the NBA like an invincible thing. Their viewership is down like 40% from like a couple of years ago on television. They may have more corporate support than like the NHL and some of the other and MLB, but their viewership's down. You want to have your viewership down? Try and get everybody just to go to BuffaloBills.com and nowhere else. They won't go. People want better information than that. They're smarter than that.
Yeah, and if you want to limit fans' access to knowledge to just show up on game day, watch the game on game day, and you'll be happy there. It doesn't work like that, especially if you have a bad team. If the team's bad, you can only limit the bad discussion about that team to so much before things really blow up in your face. And I mean, we've seen that happen in Buffalo before. The Bills missed the playoffs for 18 years. It's a shock that they let the media in at all.
Well, I'll tell you what's going to happen, Joe. If this continues, they'll probably end up having players doing their own thing on Instagram, and you'll see how that works out with the NFL. That's not going to be fun either, but that's what's going to happen, because if they're going to limit information and stuff, these guys are going to just start telling it like it is on Instagram after a game.
Well, we've started seeing that already with guys sounding off on Twitter and Instagram too. I mean, I just think of like Michael Thomas in New Orleans, who's a brilliant wide receiver, and he's really good, and he lets people know when he's not happy. And and sometimes they get that prima donna label slapped on them. No, like when you're that good and you can talk the talk and you can direct how the team's gonna do things, speak up, let it be said.
All right, let's get started here. Got lots to discuss, and obviously off the top, we'll discuss the events of yesterday throughout the world of sports. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Thursday, August 27th, 2020.
I'm Jan Levine.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Eklund will be joining us in a few minutes, and we're joined by Joe Yerdon, longtime NHL reporter, covers the Sabres and everybody else. And there's Zach right now on cue. Zach, we just did the intro, so we're starting.
Guys.
No, don't worry about it. We'll just go right into the big story and get it going.
Yeah. Sorry about that. So, anyway, and I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in the comings and goings in the hockey world. And I mean, I guess the big story is obviously what the NHL should do next. With the situation that's going on right now in the world. And I wrote my feelings today. I do believe that it probably is merited to postpone a night. It probably was merited to postpone last night, but they didn't. I don't know. I don't think it'd be wrong to do that tonight still. I still think that would be a good call. I think obviously the NBA has come out and said they're not going to cancel the season. I don't think they're canceling the season.
They're not. They're just postponing it. They're going to resume if you haven't decided when.
Right. Well, I think the NBA is, the NHL would look. It would be a good show of solidarity, and it's important, and it's like I wrote about in my blog today. This is an incredible thing for. This whole thing has been like the NHL's hit this out of the park, right? This whole event, this whole thing has been phenomenal. And to me, it's been an incredible escape, which is what we all needed from coronavirus. Like we needed escape, but we shouldn't be escaping from this situation that's going on, and this isn't political. I don't want to get political. I hate the fact that politicians are using this to to get votes. This is not political. This is systematic. This goes way beyond politics. This has been going on, this kind of stuff's been going on for before there was the United States of America. So let's not pretend that this is a political issue. It's not.
Well, let's get Joe's thoughts on it first, and I'll chime in.
Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I think what's been remarkable is the outpouring of how bad of a show this was from the NHL last night, and we're seeing even more of it today with Alain Vigneault saying like, I don't know what's going on outside these doors, and if that is the case, man, open up a website, read something, read a newspaper, do anything, like figure it out, like get educated. You can't just stick your head in the sand and ignore all this stuff and just pretend it's not happening.
Right.
And in the NHL's case, I know everybody's saying like, well, we were in our preparations for the games. We weren't sure what we were going to do yet, but Colorado and Dallas could have just said, no, not tonight. We're not doing it tonight. These are situations where, the players are getting a rapid education in this, because it's not fault. Let's not cover this up and say, these guys know exactly where this is coming from. They don't grow up in this at all. Wealthy, entitled, everything about that is just, that's not the life they've grown up in. So a lot of them don't understand that. And getting educated on it takes time. And there are some guys that have taken the time out to read, whether it's Dickinson in Dallas or it's Leonard or, it's Ryan Reeves having to shoulder a lot of this. Matt Dumba, before Minnesota was bounced out, is doing it. He's even still doing it now. Yeah. But you can't just rely on the same, 3, 4, 5 guys to keep teaching the lesson over and over again. At some point, your teammates and guys from the past and guys in the future, they got to get educated.
Yeah. I think the optics of this situation would be worse if the NHL tonight canceled games, because it would look at like they're playing lip service, like they've been shamed into, you got to postpone because you didn't postpone yesterday. The NBA postponed, Major League Baseball did, the WNBA, and you were the last one who didn't do anything. So now we're going to guilt you into postponing.
Not if they do it the right way. I don't think.
Well, I'm just saying. I think that would be the appearance. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, the incident in Minnesota with George Floyd, the incident in Kenosha with Jacob Blake, I believe his name was, are horrendous. Nobody can say otherwise. They're disgusting. They're emblematic of a societal problem. Where I wonder is, what can sports, not hockey, not basketball, not baseball, but sports in general, have in terms of an effect on this? They can draw attention to it, which obviously the NBA shutdown of games, what Major League Baseball did draw attention to it. But, I don't know, maybe I'm more aware of what's going on in the news. I knew what was going on in Kenosha before that.
Yeah, so, I can give you a good example. I'll go with what hits me personally. So, growing up, I always saw anti-Semitism and said, at times it was really bad in my life. There were just people who just hated me because my last name was Cohen, or I wore a high, or they just knew that, right? And yesterday, like when Dominic Smith, he's a ball player for the Mets, did a kneel before the Met game, none of his teammates joined him. So after the game, when he was talking about it, he was crying. And there are times when, I have cried over that subject. Now, we've seen, Jews get killed in a Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's as bad as what's going on with this, but I'm just saying, from my own personal experience, if you don't feel like people are willing to be behind you and say, yeah, we're with you, just that feeling, because it could be a pretty empty feeling for a lot of people. And eventually you have to get around to lobbying and getting to lawmakers to do something. Right. But on a grassroots level, if you don't feel like people are behind you, it's easy to say, yeah, I'm for social justice. Of course I am. But if you don't ever do anything for it, if you don't ever talk about it, if you don't ever donate for those causes, it's really just lip service.
And you see, I want to get Jan's opinion too. But let me say this one thing before, and then Jan, I'd like you to speak on it, because I want to follow up on something you said, Russ, there, which I think is important. To me, the difference between when I was born in 1968, which was a very turbulent year, as Mike, history major will tell us, it was, and there were huge race riots at the time I was being born. It was, there were, the biggest race riots since what we've seen recently, were happening. Mm-hmm. And the difference between that and this is astonishing. I talked to my mom about this, because obviously, she was 21 when I was born. And the difference is that, those were race riots. These are riots against racism. She's like, and that's a huge difference where you had, because here he said, back then, she said, we all sat on the sideline and watched. We knew that it was wrong what was happening, but we just sat there and watched. Where now, people who aren't, African American or black are joining hands with everybody else in these situations. That's a huge difference, and that's the difference I think the NHL and the NBA and things like that make here. That it's not that we're showing that it's not just a group of people fighting for their rights. It's these other people also saying we have your backs. And like Russ just said there, I think that's what makes this time of history different, and what makes what's important about this. Jan, your thoughts? Sorry.
So, as Russ knows, I've probably experienced the same. Part of the reason, in full disclosure, why I wear a baseball cap every day I went to work is post 9/11. I'm one of those who wore yarmulke to work every day. And there was enough comments that the Jews were to blame for 9/11 and enough chatter that I felt safer by wearing a baseball cap than just wearing my yarmulke, and I've continued wearing it. Now, granted, I've probably gone overboard and have 100-something hats to change, but that was kind of as a response to that, right? So the whole point of this, right? So the Dominic Smith, right? So Michael Conforto spoke about it yesterday and said he probably should have been arm in arm. But the point of this conference was, people talk about him doing stuff to remediate situation. Well, Dominic Smith is one of those who is, right? He has a foundation. He's doing a lot. There are a lot of people who do sports. The whole point of the conversation is to raise awareness. It's to raise public awareness associated with this. Now, granted, look, on both sides of the equation, I know a lot of the pushback on Kenosha was he disobeyed the cops, and there's no question that he did. But that also doesn't mean that you shoot him 7 times in the back. There are other mediums and mechanisms to deal with the situation, and finding that balance. And I was trying to teach my kids, right? There are good cops and there are bad cops. That doesn't mean you paint everybody with the same brush. That doesn't mean you paint everybody, right? You treat everybody equally and fairly, regardless of the skin, their creed, their color, their race, their everything. Part of the whole point of this is that, unfortunately, that the color of somebody's skin still has a tendency to change your perception or your view of that individual and how it manifests itself and how you treat it. And the goal, I believe, is what they're trying to do is to raise the awareness is that they should be equal, and there should be equal rights for everybody regardless. The NBA did it, and that in that league, the players have a ton of power, right? And it's been the case since day one. Partly is there's a large propensity of black individuals within that league so they can drive some of the power. What I was most impressed by MLB, you hear some of the comments that Mookie Betts said. Clayton Kershaw has done a ton of work, said, look, whatever Mookie wants, we're going to go ahead and do. The Brewers came out yesterday, the Reds, the Giants, the Dodgers. There's a lot of teams that have come out. They asked Luis Rojas afterwards. He said, look, we found out, as this was going on, it was when we were warming up. Granted, maybe they should have not played yesterday. The NHL, in my opinion, probably dropped the ball in a couple of aspects. One, having the moment of silence on the Eastern games, but not on the Western games, shows you're inconsistent in your message in terms of how you're showing it. B, if you're going to show solidarity and you view it, look, Gary Bettman came from the NBA. That's where he got his start. If you're going to show solidarity, then you probably should follow along what the NBA did, even though, granted, look, Matt Dumb, there's only a handful, Matt Dumb and a couple of others, who are black individuals who are in the league to show in terms of showing that solidarity. But the message that came out, you read some of the stuff what Barry Trotz said, right? And that we need to be a messenger for change. We need to be the people that focus in terms of how we handle this. Look, I understand the disagreement. Unfortunately, as you wrote, this is going to be political. There is no way this is not going to be political. You can talk to your blue in the face. It's going to be political.
I know. I understand.
That's where we are as a country right now. Be it right or be it wrong, it doesn't matter, unfortunately, who's in office. This is where we are as a country. Hopefully we get to a better place. Hopefully we get to communication between the both sides to try to find a medium for change, because right now we're clearly trending in the wrong direction.
Everything is polarized, and
it is polarized, and then people are. But to me, that the politicians are using this to further do that, and that to me is like an astonishing thing. That that you would take something horrible like this.
It's an election year, They're going to try.
Yeah, believe me, I know.
And my kids have marched. I have gone marched them. My wife is very big in this.
I know you have.
The point is our town unfortunately was a trending topic adversely. Based upon the way we treated some stuff when we did some of the marches a while ago, and look,
Bettman also deals with his anti-Semitism. I've talked to him about it. He's very aware of it. It's something that hits him hard. He's gotten tons of. I'm married to a Jewish woman. My kids are Jewish. I'm not Jewish, but I get anti-Semitic emails all the friggin' time, and it's unbelievable. And it's just like, it's astonishing to me that this all exists out there. There are bad people out there. They're not the majority of people, but there are bad people out there, and what this does yesterday by them not playing is it makes everybody who maybe you weren't paying attention to this. Maybe you were working their balls off all day at a job or something like that. And you come home and you're like, why is the game not on?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, because there are people who don't have the time to sit back and listen to news all day or whatever, and they come home and then by them not playing, then they have to do some research, and by them doing the research, that's where the awareness, that's where the benefit comes. The one thing I don't agree with, and Cameron says in the chat room too, is that the NHL dropped the ball. I do agree the NHL dropped the ball yesterday. But I don't agree that you can't admit you were wrong and fix it. Like, I think that we live in a society where they could say, listen, you know what? We really dropped the ball. If I'm Bettman, I come out and say, we should have done this yesterday. We're doing it today. We're sorry we didn't do it yesterday. We really dropped the ball. We need to be more aware. Them fessing up to that and actually changing things, I think is what they need to do. That's what they absolutely need to do. And I think people will respect that. I don't think anyone's going to sit there and say, oh, the optics aren't good or whatever. They're going to sit there and say, oh, the NHL understands. Because a lot of this is about admitting that you don't quite get it right away.
Joe, there were indications from some of the reporting that I saw that the players were consulted. The players decided that they wanted to play, and there were some complaints that the NHL didn't show any kind of leadership in terms of saying no, that they shouldn't play. But honestly, it's like the NBA, the players, they took the lead. They said we're going to not play. The NHL did the same thing, and their rank and file said we're going to play. Maybe it's a wrong decision, but I think the NHL had to respect what their players wanted to do.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for that too. But I think something that's frustrating with the NHL, and I think there's a lot of the frustration from fans, is that they want the NHL to take the initiative on a lot of these things and to take the lead instead of reacting to see how other leagues do it. We kind of saw it at the beginning of the playoff with how they handled the Black Lives Matter stuff at the start of the playoffs, and putting up banners and doing moments of silence and having guys kneel and doing things like that. But that came as sort of reactionary, but it came from some of the players too. Seeing Sagan do that, seeing Leonard and those guys do that, like that's the initiative that guys have to take. But unfortunately, the mindset in hockey is it's so all for one and one for all that you don't want to stir things up. You don't want to be the center of attention. You don't want to do any of that stuff. No, and that's where things really fail here, because guys that have strong opinions on this, and there are players that do, they have to take the lead. They have to take the initiative. And if guys in the room want to fight with them about it, well, that's more telling about the problems with those guys than it is anything else.
I just, Joe, the one thing I thought about was, besides the league, like, we're never going to hear from the owners, right? Because we hear it through the league. So forget about hearing from the owners. But these players have a lot of free time in the bubble, and they could be meeting like NBA players, and they could be trying to mobilize, and they could be trying to get a better message, and they could be trying to do all of this, and they're not. And that's something that's on them. I get it that there's not that many black players in hockey, but for the ones that there are, they do want to feel like they're supported. And just, being a teammate is not enough support anymore.
Well, Gabriel Landeskog came out yesterday pretty vociferously in terms of saying what the conversations are like in the Avalanche locker room, right? That, quote unquote, he said it's like a high bar, I think is what he said, in terms of the conversations that are having. And he's been rather vociferous in his views associated with this, in terms of believing that they potentially should have shut down. It seems to be the theme that he's saying. Now, granted, I don't think he's individualistic in that, but as Joe said, right, hockey in general has been a collective view in terms of how they've been, I won't say perceived, but how they portrayed themselves, right, as being the working class guys coming from probably from the stems from how hockey started in terms of the type of players that were in the league. And granted, Landeskog, I'm not sure you guys would know better if he's an American citizen now or not, and if he has the ability to vote or not, but he's been rather strong in terms of viewpoints, and I have a feeling that his view is probably shared by lots of others. But as Joe said, it's probably not publicly stated, because that's just not the nature of what hockey guys are.
Right.
But they are becoming more and more like that in terms of making sure their views are known out there.
Yeah, there's a general thing with among hockey players, and you guys, we've covered them, and if Kevin was on here, he would say the same thing. Hockey players tend to be fiscally Republican, socially democratic. That there are a lot of them are Republican. A lot of them vote Republican.
Well, I was going to say for every Landeskog, you may have a Logan Couture.
Yeah, but I would say, like Kevin, we had this discussion one time with Kevin. I said, well, a lot of them are Canadians, kind of surprising. Kevin's like, no, Kevin thinks that more of them, he's like, I would say about 70% of them are Republicans. Now, that's not that they're Trump Republicans, but they're Republicans in what they vote and how they vote for certain things, but they are fiscally, socially different, but, more in the mid, more, I don't know, libertarian or whatever you want to call it. But I think that the whole thing of it, I don't want to get political, but the reality is, like you said, it is political, Jan. You can't get away from that. Especially when all this is happening, when a Republican convention is going on that looks like it's pretending that none of this is happening. So the whole thing, but I want to keep it here, for our purposes on hockey, because it's easy to not go there. And I think we'd all want to not go there in some ways, but that would be another thing. And people come to us to talk about hockey and escape as well. Unfortunately, this is the story today that we have to talk about, and I'm getting a lot of like texts and things like that. Oh, you said you never talk about this. This is, unfortunately, this is reality right now.
Yeah, but we're not going to devote the entire show.
No, we're not going to devote the entire show to it. We're going to move on. We have a lot of great hockey to talk about.
Just to let you know, Evander Kane tweeted out something that we at the official Hockey Diversity Alliance have formally requested the NHL suspend all playoff games today. We strongly feel this sends a clear message that human rights take priority over sports. And I know Jan put something in our private chat that there's some talk that they will postpone tonight's two games.
I think
that's yet to be seen, but I don't know. See, to me, I think the NHL is going to get criticism one way or the other from this. In this instance, they're going to say, well, they were late to the party.
Who cares?
But, well, I'm just saying, I think that
they're going to say that. But like I wrote in the chat, like when you're saying you're sorry, you can't care about how it looks. Like that's something you can't. That's not part of apologizing, right?
I'm just saying,
you know what I mean? Does that make sense, Mike? To you, to me, I don't know. Continue your thought, Mike. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I'm done. Let's.
I just don't think you can. I don't think you can care about how you look. Saying you're sorry, and I think saying you're sorry and making it right is better than just ignoring it and not looking bad. Not and whatever. I think that ignoring it would be the worst thing they could do, and I don't think they're going to. I would bet money on this that they don't have games tonight. Just and say something like we probably should have done this yesterday, and that and just leave it there. Don't make excuses as the games were starting already or things were happening or whatever. Just say what you say the reality is. That's we all but let's get on past that. I wouldn't be shocked if we have some news. Even I was talking to a source right before I was late, who was saying that he thinks that we could have an announcement imminently. So I wouldn't be surprised if we hear something within the next little bit here.
All right.
That we are playing tonight.
Okay, let's start with the early game from yesterday.
All right, yeah, let's get on to the games. Okay, so yesterday, first of all, I'm going to gloat. I got to gloat. And I know Mike loves when I gloat.
4-3 overtime win on a puck that goes off the forward and does a hop.
Wait a second.
What are you talking about? We got to tell everybody what we're talking about before we get into this. Okay, so this is what I was doing. Okay, so a couple days ago, I made this statement, clearly based on statistics and absolutely truth, that when teams are blown away in a playoff series, they tend to actually come back and win that playoff series more than they don't, and often, very, very often, win the next game. So I said I would bet your house on Vancouver and Philly in the next game. This is before either of those teams played. Vancouver, we saw what happened. Philly, yeah, it was looking that way. And Jan, of course, the other thing I will tell you, Jan, flat out, is that whenever I tweet about something, whenever I text you guys, or Mike knows this more than anyone, whenever I text something in the middle of the game, I told you the Flyers are going to win. You can guarantee that I'm going to screw things up, because yesterday I do that when it's 3-0. Like I did that with Toronto in a rather famous.
Yeah, don't remind me.
So and the worst lead in hockey is 3-0, as we know.
It really is, and
Toronto 4-1,
and the Flyers
same difference.
But what I want to ask you is, the Flyers got the 3-0, and everybody was saying, "Oh, they got their act together." I don't think they did.
No, I don't think they fully did either. I think they had a couple of good plays, and I think they got some help with the opposing goaltending, and as a result, they pulled Varlamov because he was off almost right from the bat.
What a brilliant move!
I think it was a combination of those two things. But then what you saw was, as the game went on, and this is going to be the problem for the Flyers in the series. Even though I picked the Flyers in 7, the Islanders' will as a team is greater than the Flyers' will, and that's what you saw yesterday. And that is the biggest thing they're going to have to combat in this series. The Flyers.
I feel that their forwards are quicker than they play quicker than the Flyers defense plays, and that's you can see that coming up all the time. I agree with you completely. And to me, that game was that goal by Hayes, the first goal of the game, was just that was the Flyers season right there that he scored that goal. Because before that, the Islanders are just, if the Islanders get a quick goal there and dominate, and then this whole series could be over in 4 or 5. I think the fact that Hayes gets that goal, which was a hell of a shot. But that was the first shot they had and the only shot they had for a while.
I do want to answer this guy Kyle in the chat room, Eck. He said, I wonder if Russ will put his money where his mouth is instead of laughing at Eck. I don't bet on hockey games, but thanks.
No, I know. And he doesn't really laugh at me that much anyway.
No, that's my job. Joe, what did you think of that game?
The thing that strikes me about the game is that the fact that the Isles came back and that is not surprising. I think if you get up, I think if Philly gets up like 4 or 5-0 in that first period, and they can punt away the next 2 periods and not have to worry about it. But Russ makes a really good point. The will of the Islanders is much stronger. I mean, that comes from Trotz. Yeah. But I look at how that team is set up, and they're set up so that they've got 3 lines that will wear out the opposing 3 lines no matter what. And then you throw Barzal's line out, and they can skate past everybody. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest problem that the Flyers and whoever they have to deal with the next round, Tampa or Boston, either way, they're going to have a hard time having to deal with that because it's the system, it's the mentality, and it's the way that they play. They do not relent, and I think that's a perfectly made. And I can't say perfectly made playoff team, but like that's a team that's made the way they play to have a lot of success in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Especially against certain kinds of teams, and there's a lot of those teams are teams that are in the playoffs. Like they are, you're right about that. The playoffs, I've always said, like, are won by counterattack teams. Like it's bizarre. It's always the case though, right? It's like that's what the Islanders' way is. They are so much like the Devils teams from the past that it's just ridiculous. Of that thing that they're going to come at you like they are down a goal for the first 10 minutes of the game. Like just pouring it on like there's no tomorrow, like they've got to tie it up or whatever just to get that lead that they can sit on.
But I think once it was 3-1, we all knew they were coming back.
Oh yeah, no, there was no question that they were going to, especially when they were going to tie it, Russ, too. Like
yes,
you're sitting there and I'm sitting there with my son and I'm like, damn it. I'm like, I texted those guys earlier that I would pick the Flyers and I can tell you there's no way they're going to survive this. There's no way they're not going to give up a goal here to get it tied. It was unbelievable. It was that Swiss national goalie that was in there for the overtime winner that really killed them. Well, Thomas Greiss, the great Thomas Greiss.
I mean, he did play okay up to that point. He did.
Yeah, and he had a shot on the puck that bounced off the ice that went past him. Clearly, it was his fault.
He'll be the backup in
the brilliant move to put in Mr. Greiss. I'll say that.
Who probably should start today if they play.
I wouldn't start.
No, you can't do that.
Varlamov looks so bad. Look,
it doesn't matter. You still have to go.
He's coming up with a record-setting shutout streak. Come on, give him a break.
But again, Rice righted the ship yesterday. It is back-to-back. Look, I could see them going with Varlamov because he only played part of the first period yesterday.
Yeah.
But Rice played exceedingly well yesterday, kind of calming things down, allowing them to get back in the game to even make it to overtime.
Well, here's the thing that could be affected by if the games are postponed. I'm not sure if it was Anthony Russ or Bill Meltzer who was talking about the possibility of them starting Brian Elliott today.
It was Anthony. I brought it up on Sirius because I said if the defense is going to continue to break down in front of Carter Hart, then they're not going to have a choice but to put Elliott in there because he's the goalie that could actually deal with that. That's his specialty. And, going on back-to-back, I would not be shocked if they play that's exactly what happens because, again, too much is breaking down in front of Carter Hart, way too much.
Now, Joe, if they postpone, then they'd probably go to Carter Hart if they delay the game to the next day.
Yeah, that gives Hart a little bit extra time to breathe, a little bit of extra time to focus and kind of just put that the way that game played out towards the end out of his mind. Plus, he's a kid still. I mean, you can throw a kid out there every day if you want to, but I mean, we're getting into the depths of the playoffs now, and it's a lot to handle. It's a lot different from playing World Juniors. It's a lot different from playing Memorial Cup type games, and this pressure. I mean, even though he's probably the best situation for him that there's no fans.
It really is
in the stands, so he can just relax.
And one last thing.
So true.
You never want to see your video coach cost you a hockey game but that is almost what happened with the Flyers yesterday. Because now, again, we don't know what view they're looking at, but at some point you have to, even though you're looking at it quickly, you have to realize, boy, this is not 100%. I saw at home it was not 100%.
Here's what I wonder.
I couldn't believe that with a tie game, they would not only risk doing that, but giving a potential win on the power play for the Islanders. Luckily, it didn't work out that way.
Imagine if the Islanders on that power play.
Oh yeah.
Here's the thing that I wonder, and I didn't get a chance to ask the question in the press conference. But here's the thing that I really wonder. Keith Jones is sitting there saying all he's got to do is touch the blue line when he gets back. All he's got to do is touch the blue line. Did you think that was the rule? Like I'm thinking.
Actually, nowadays, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not. I know. I mean, the more I thought about it, like, yeah, that's true. They did change that a little while ago, right? From but I wonder. You've got the Terrien, you've got Vigneault. You've got. I'm not just saying it was Terrien's fault. No, it was.
You're gonna angle it there, though.
Don't like Terrien, but that's okay. But you've got Terrien and Vigneault, two older guys looking at this thing, right? And I'm
a video coach.
And a video coach who is, I'm not sure what his age is, but whatever.
Joe is the Antichrist.
Are you sure that they thought that they knew that he just has to touch the blue line? I'm really curious because
I would say of the collective group, somebody had to know.
I don't know that. Like we always assume that, right?
This isn't Donovan McNabb not knowing the rules.
No, that's always had to know. But I've been amazed in hockey, and I know we've all probably asked questions sometimes. I've been amazed at the things that they don't know sometimes.
I think the reason, I will tell you this, I think the reason they know is the whole skate in the air thing. I think that's why they know, because that was the whole start of that nasty.
It was, but I don't know. I felt like, to me, I'm like, do they, as Jones is saying that, I'm like, but do they know that? Because they were so confident the way they were doing it. And it was so obvious that his skate had touched the line. So did they know this?
Yes.
I mean,
answer yes.
What do you think, Joe?
Yeah. I can't imagine a video coach just saying, yeah, screw it, let's do it. In that situation, that to me is a okay, you got away with it that time, but we're going to discuss this when the season's over. We're going to have a very long talk about this to see if that was actually the case. It's unfortunate nobody asked about it after the game to find out what the thought was, but I'm sure that they were relieved to get a win and just be like, hey, we don't have to worry about that now.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't think unless you're 100% confident, you go with that.
And but you look, if the goal gets overturned, right, you're still up a goal with 2+ minutes to go. And I can understand the rationale for making the attempt, right? I don't think it was crystal clear in the angles we saw initially based upon what was showing. It wasn't crystal clear either until later on. Even then, still not sure it was really crystal clear, but it was not enough to overturn. So I can understand the rationale for making the attempt, because if you do somehow lucky enough get it overturned, you still got your 1-goal lead.
Now we don't have to spend a lot of time on this game because it wasn't really a close contest, and it was pretty.
Okay, one more thing, Mike. I'm sorry. I have one more thing in my notes. I apologize.
Yep.
I really wanted to bring up what's happening. For all the Flyers are in trouble in this series, and I picked them to lose in 6, and I still think they're in trouble in this series. I really think that the next game is.
This wasn't a win to feel great about.
No, it wasn't at all. I mean, but the one thing you have to say is the Flyers' top 4 young defense of Provorov, Sanheim, and Myers is probably about as good as any top 3 young defense in the league. Like that.
I'm not going there yet. I have moments, but I'm telling you, there's other moments. Like Myers was getting out physicaled at times because of angles that the Islanders guys were taking. I can't remember who it was, but they leaned on Myers the right way using leverage, and he was completely useless on a play that was an important play.
Okay.
They do have moments. I am not ready to go there yet, though.
Okay.
I think they will be, though.
Yeah, and maybe that's what I'm saying. I mean, there is no question. I mean, there are some moments when they look fantastic, and you wonder, like, who's better, like Myers or Sanheim? They're both so good.
Sanheim's still better.
I think Sanheim's better, but I'm not 100% sure about that sometimes. Like, sometimes they're different, which is nice. I mean, they are different. They complement each other, so it's really hard to compare them one way or the other. But all right, Mike, let's go on to the next game. Sorry.
Yeah, so, the anticipated Game 3 between the Bruins and the Lightning was not very anticipated after about, I'd say, 12 minutes, 13 minutes in the first period. It ended up 7-1. It was pretty one-sided. Now, the thing was, Boston actually got an offside, got a break on that one off. Was that? Wait, was that game 2 or is that game? No, that was yesterday. That they
I don't remember if it was yesterday now.
Okay, I'm confusing it, but yeah. All I know is that Tampa really no, that was game 2. This game was the linesman getting in the way of Yanni Gourde, right. Which, Joe, I haven't seen that many times, but in a playoff game, in a 1-0 game, when you're a linesman and you have an opportunity to skate into the corner and instead you skate in between a defenseman and the forward and do a pick play, basically, that I think the Bruins were done at that point.
I don't know if they were done, but that's so frustrating to have that happen. I mean, it's a freak play. It's a reaction from the linesman. So much of being a linesman should be muscle memory kind of stuff. Where you should know to get to the wall instead of like jumping out, into the play. But sometimes if you're like your inner radars tells you that there's guys along the wall, and you're just gonna say, well, it's easier for me to get out this way. That's where all the play is happening. That's not. I mean, that's a goof up, but I mean, if that's costing Boston the game,
if they're slightly, that fragile,
the only analysis I have for this game is, and I know everybody wants to blame Halak, and at the end of the day, would their goalie situation be better if they had Rask? Sure, but what if Rask were injured? We'd be still in the same boat. So I don't put it on Rask. What I put it on is at the end of the last game, the Bruins' legs were dead in overtime. And you know what? They were dead to start that game too. Tampa looked like they started that game on rocket fuel, and the Bruins looked like turtles out there. They could barely move. And
they were killing them. And they threw Daniel Vladar to the wolves. I mean, that was just, he was a sacrificial lamb basically.
But that's fine. I mean, that's part of the job. But I'm just saying they couldn't move. They couldn't match Tampa. And I did say, and I think Tampa is figuring Boston out. I do. And I think that game is more reason to show that. And I think Boston now has to figure them out a little or they're in trouble.
Yeah, Davy Jones says, according to X Theory, the Bruins are likely to win the series now.
It's not a theory, guys. It's like it's 20 years of a team winning by more than 5 goals in a playoff series. That team loses 30% of the time. And it's a ridiculous thing. But I'm just saying, and I don't think that'll happen. I mean, I think that Tampa's going to win this series. I still sticking by that, but I'll tell you, according to my theory, this doesn't bode well for the Bruins. So according to not my theory, but according to the last 20 years of stats or whatever.
Well, I tell you, the way Halak handled the game at the end of game 2, that wouldn't instill a lot of confidence in me. The fact that anybody was even kind of teasing the idea of, do you even start Halak in game 3 is crazy, considering his backup had 0 NHL experience.
Right.
I mean, it kind of tells you where the mindset and the faith is in him to keep it going. And once he got pulled from game 3, the rest of the team just said, forget it. Let's wait for game 4. And to me, that's really unfair to Danny Vladar because what's he trying? What's he doing? He's getting his first taste of NHL action.
I know.
It's in the freaking playoffs.
And he has a lot of Bruins. It's the Bruins thing to do. It's like the Bruins literally are playing like if they were playing ping pong, they're down by like 20. They're down 15-0. They're just going to throw the game and whatever. We'll concentrate on the next game. It takes too much energy to get back in this thing.
They weren't totally throwing it though, because there were still some dirty shots on both sides, like we thought. And, we saw McAvoy take a run after a dirty shot, which was right for him to do. There was still some of that. But at the end of the day, I do think Cooper is doing the better coaching job here. And bringing in Coburn, that was a big thing. Because you know what?
Yeah.
Forget how good Braden Coburn is at tying guys up. He may not be fast anymore, and he may not. But you know what? He knows how to tie guys up.
He is smart, and he has
long reach. We forget about that.
Yeah, I mean his game. His issues I've said before. They're always when he outthinks himself sometimes. But if he just plays instinctually, his instincts are really good.
Yeah, and he's a valuable guy to just chuck in there.
Yeah.
Well,
I will on this, Jen.
If Boston doesn't find a way to slow Tampa down through the neutral zone, this series is going to end rather quickly. I mean, Tampa was coming in waves yesterday. I mean, and look. You see how good Kucherov is. You see how good Point is. You see how good Hedman is. We talked about Boston having enviable depth, especially, their second line with Krejci, but we keep forgetting how much depth Tampa has, and Mike talked about a lot, right? That third line with Barclay Goodrow, with Yanni Gourde, and with Blake Coleman.
Gourde was great.
One heck of a third line. and that's the quote unquote their checking line, let alone the offense in their top two lines, right? So Hedman being healthy is a game changer, and don't forget McDonough's still not 100%, and they're making do. Sergachev wasn't great in the loss, but played a lot better yesterday. I mean, if they're able to go through the neutral zone with impunity and not get stopped by Boston or even slowed, Boston's gonna have a hard time staying in this series.
And Joe, let me ask you, this guy number 24, Bogosian, I know I've seen him somewhere. Where it's sort of popping in my head. Where is he from? Where did he play?
Well, he was from Messina, New York, way upstate, and he played for the Sabres for a few seasons.
Right.
Ended up getting the not so kind waiver treatment out of town. He looks completely rejuvenated, which
he looks better.
Personally, I'm really happy to see. I like Zach quite a bit, and I'm
good guy. Yeah,
to see him thrive in this, but it's driving fans here absolutely.
Oh my God!
Oh, sure.
He's allowed to play a role there. That's the whole thing.
Yeah, he is playing a role.
He's playing a very specific role, and that's that. Players are better when they're given specific roles.
It's a question of what's driving a fan base more nuts: Bogosian playing the way he is in Tampa, or the way Nazem Kadri is playing in Colorado.
Well, let's talk about that series.
Yeah, because
so another thing here, real quick. I just got a text that there is talk of moving today's games. I know, obviously, we talked about that before.
Yeah,
but it would be they would move them all to tomorrow, and then what would happen is there could be a reshuffling of, like, maybe the Flyers are at 7 at night, the Bruins are 3 in the afternoon. I heard, depending on how they're doing it, because they want to put the Flyers and the Islanders. They don't want to put them in another afternoon game for all that kind of thing. Whatever. The Flyers and Islanders are noon on Saturday, I think it is.
Right.
So this would make the Flyers and Islanders have back-to-back games for games 4 and 5 as opposed to games 3 and 4. Basically, is the difference. So that does.
But I will say this, Ek.
Yeah.
If the games get moved, make Zoom calls available for guys that want to talk about this.
Yeah.
So we can write about this.
Yeah. No. That absolutely. And so that so that they can make a statement. That's not just.
Correct. This would be the time now that you could do it because it's not a game day.
I would have, like, Dumba and those guys. I would their organization there.
Basically, if I were league PR, I would let anybody who wants to do it, and I would schedule them.
Yeah. So we might have a ton of games tomorrow. Essentially, is what.
Yeah, and just last note on that game. If the Bruins, no matter how good their penalty killing is, if they give up 6 power plays and take stupid penalties like Nick Ritchie did in the first period, even though Tampa, I think, was like 0 for 16 on the power play before they scored 3 goals, you are going to lose. You cannot do that. You have to show some more discipline, and they were completely without discipline yesterday.
Agreed. Well, let's step on to the main event, which was a hell of a main event, by the way. If you're able to stay up late and falling asleep.
I kept waking up.
I friggin' fell asleep when it was 4-3, 4-3 Dallas. And
so you're responsible then.
Woke up a couple seconds later and it's 5-4 Colorado. I'm like, holy cow, what the hell? So yeah, what a game though. I mean, what a series this is. Just Dallas. What a fun team to watch right now.
Well, Joe, let me say this. Let me ask you this, because I watched that game compared to Philly and the Islanders, and even compared to Boston and Tampa. Those 2 games were in first gear, and Dallas, Colorado was in like 4th or 5th. They are flying all over the place. Like they have so much size in their lineup. Dallas, they have Colorado has so much speed. They're slamming each other all over the place. That's unbelievable hockey.
Yeah, Dallas has reminded me a little bit of LA in 2012.
Yes,
with how they're playing. It's not quite the same with goaltending, although no one's done well. But the way that they're able to just score is I don't think anybody expected to see that. Even with Sagan and Ben and those guys in the lineup, I don't think anybody thought that this team was going to be able to pile up goals like that. Right. It helps that Colorado's without their starting goalie, I understand, but they were doing it in the round before this too.
Right.
It's really impressive to see them keep up with Colorado's speed, though. That to me is the more impressive thing. I thought Colorado was going to be a huge favorite in every series because they got the speed to burn, but Dallas is hanging right there with them. They're even accelerating past them in a lot of cases. And the fact that McKinnon's able to just go bananas anyways, and they're still able to win games is pretty amazing. But that was a hell of an effort by Colorado last night to take all those punches and still keep fighting back. That's a really impressive effort.
Heck, I do want to mention, I was on the Dallas call 2 days ago with Bonus, and he finally was getting asked point blank about Bishop because he actually, I want to say, probably let it slip that Bishop was skating. And the minute he said Bishop was skating, then, of course, the media intuitively wanted to know, well, is he fit to play? Like, is he right. – and they didn't use that terminology because we all hate that. But at the end of the day, he basically just quickly said he's skating, but he's unfit to play, and that's all I'm going to say. And he said it that way before, and it makes me believe that right now he doesn't want to make a change, even if Bishop is healthy. I believe that. Now, if Khudobin has a couple bad games, you might hear a little bit more on Ben Bishop's injury or whatever it is. But the idea is he doesn't want to make a change, and you could tell that the team is sort of trying to hide it best they can.
Yeah, as good as Khudobin was in Game 2, I thought he was not good in Game 3. Now, Colorado is an extremely talented team, but I thought some of the goals were pretty weak. The one, who was it, Landeskog, the one that went between the legs. I mean, that was, I thought that was a winnable game, especially when Dallas came back to take the lead 4-3 with about 10 minutes left to go. I didn't think that Colorado was going to collapse, but they needed a save from Khudobin at that point, and they didn't get it.
I mean, this game had more plot twists than a Hitchcockian movie. I mean, it was just ridiculous. I mean, Dallas goes up 1-0. Colorado comes back. They take a really stupid penalty to end the second period. They take a stupid penalty early in the third period. Shortly thereafter, Dallas scores, and then the floodgates open. It's 4-3. And Eck probably fell asleep thinking, well, Colorado's just basically blown their shot, and they're toasted to the playoffs. Because if they lose last night, 3-0, they're look, we know the odds are unlikely that they're coming back. And then all of a sudden, switch flipped, and it's 5-4, and they get the game winner. And first of all, these are two teams that really have built up a healthy dislike for one another. Watching, we talk about cheap shots in the Boston series. There's a lot more in this series, which is surprising based upon these two teams. I mean, there's a lot of anger and ire between these two teams for sure.
There's the likable Corey Perry on one side and Kadri on the other. So they just instill that kind of good feeling amongst their teammates and amongst the other team.
Colorado's doing it without Calvert, without Eric Johnson, without Grubauer.
Yeah, without Johnson, it's huge. It really is.
And Johnson is a absolutely huge loss. But Cale Makar made a couple of world-class plays last night. Yeah. McKinnon was brilliant.
I mean, Connaughton put up an assist. I guess I can't complain about him anymore.
And Rantanen also was very good last night. So, I mean, look, it's 2-1. They're back in this series. Do I have more confidence that they're going to win? I don't know if I'd say that because Dallas, is, as Joe said, is scoring at a rate that we didn't expect them, though. If you take a look at their last 5 games, all of a sudden their offense is kicked into high gear.
Well, Joe, the one thing that happened last night that sort of under the radar was Nikita Zadorov got hurt in the second period. He was on the bench and didn't play a shift in the third. If he's out, and that was the same thing that happened with Johnson in Game 1. He came back to the bench, but he didn't play. If he's out, now you're talking about another minutes-eating defenseman and probably having to insert either Connor Timmins or Bowen Byram into the lineup.
Yeah, and that's asking a lot of a couple of younger players to do that. Yeah. Zadorov is such a physical element back in that blue line. He's part of he's one of those irritants that I'm sure Dallas would be happy to have him not be in the lineup because having him just hounding you in the corners and running you into the boards all game long is just not enjoyable. But in Colorado's case, when you're already down a guy like Johnson, if you lose Zadorov as well, you're asking a lot of some young guys to really step up and have the shoulder that weight, especially, a guy like Byram or even Timmins. I mean, these are guys that don't have a lot of NHL experience, and throwing them right into that kind of fire, the way Dallas is playing, is asking a lot.
Yeah, but
there's a lot of times, real quick, sorry to interrupt, but it's being said in the chat room, and I'm getting texts too, and like I said before, and Elliot Friedman now and Pierre LeBrun are saying all signs point to postponement for tonight's games. So that does look like we're ahead.
I was just going to say, Byram is the better offensive player, but Timmins actually has a little size to him and a little bit of toughness. He did play 40 games in the A. I really wouldn't hesitate putting him in, but I honestly hate, Joe, when coaches just go, well, we've got this veteran guy here, and I know he doesn't play much, but I just feel safer with him in there. I don't like that. And especially when you're playing from behind. It worked out yesterday, but at some point, I would not mind seeing Timmins in there at all.
Gee, let's see. Are we going to put in Rasmus Sandin in a game of 5 elimination, or are we going to play Martin Marincin?
Right, I know, but coaches almost every time will put in that other guy, so it's like one less thing they feel like they have to worry about.
Yeah, the other guy has experience. He has experience at sucking. That's the problem.
He's got a real winning back pedigree there.
Now we have to touch on this act because the news came out like real late in the show yesterday, and we only touched on it. The ruling by the NHL regarding the Arizona Coyotes, Joe, I found it very conspicuous that, okay, it was draft picks. There was no monetary suspension. This is Bettman basically saying, okay, the new ownership is not responsible. We're not going to penalize the new ownership with potentially $5 million in fines because it was apparently 20 or more than 20 instances where they were getting information outside of the combine or outside of the normal testing situation. But the penalties of a second round pick this upcoming draft and then a 2021 first, I don't care what they said about Chaika quitting. This is tied to Chaika, and this is, the penalty was because of Chaika.
Well, I look at this. And I don't know if you're saying this is not a stiff penalty or if it is.
Oh, it's a stiff penalty.
No, it's a stiff penalty.
All right.
It's a lot.
Because given the picks they traded away for Taylor Hall and whatnot.
Yeah.
Looking at them not having top 60 picks the next 2 seasons.
Right.
It's rough.
Let's face it, Arizona's a team that has to build through drafting well and having those prospects. That's a kick right in the teeth.
Yeah.
That hurts them badly. I think you want to see a financial penalty, but I don't know. I made a wisecrack that this is the kind of punishment that you get if you sign Ilya Kovalchuk illegally twice over. But this is the kind of thing where, Chaik is gone, so we'll spare you the financial penalty, but you guys screwed with the draft. You screwed with the scouting. You screwed with the stuff that is very explicitly off limits to do. So we're gonna hit you where it counts the most, and it's those areas. So unless all the scouts are fired with Chaika, that I assume the scouts had to take part in that too.
There's going to be some more. There's going to be some more movement now, but the interesting thing is, like I had been saying for months, that obviously other scouts of other teams were really mad about this, and they really wanted the NHL to do something. And I think the NHL really responded. Here's a June 8th tweet from Ken Campbell. Arizona Coyotes owner Alex Manullo said he doesn't expect the sanctions against his team for the alleged recruiting violations will be substantial. He would not elaborate. There was speculation the Coyotes would be fined in the millions of dollars and lose draft picks. Well, Alex, you found out it was pretty substantial. So it just shows you that the league, at the end of the day, did the right thing here. And you know what? Those picks will hurt.
But also, don't tell Gary Bettman what he's not going to do either. That's the other part of it. Don't say, Gary's not going to hit us that hard. Okay.
Yeah. Now, and the funny thing is, this upcoming draft, their first pick is in the 4th round. In 2021, if they re-sign Taylor Hall, their first pick is in the 4th round. So you're talking the first 3 rounds of their draft 2 years in a row.
That's like 100 players that they're not going to get to pick. Yeah,
if I'm Steve Sullivan, I'm trading somebody and getting a better draft pick in this really good draft.
If I'm Steve Sullivan, I take an assistant GM's job in another organization.
All right, so I want to talk about one more thing here, and that is this goal. And why I believe this is a problem. Okay, so this is Bo Horvat's goal from the other night. It's the last game. All right, and I'm going to play it now.
Are we going to have a better view, not the blimp view?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, hopefully.
I know, because sometimes in the game they give us the blimp view and it's awful.
Okay, so here's the this is the goal. Now remember this goal. This was like, this is obviously you just used here with the defensive coverage, with nobody in front at all 4 players. But what I need to look at here, and it's hard to see because it's a little bit, is the reaction of Robin Lehner after this goal. And that, my friends, is what
Will you come on with your Lehner hate?
I'm not hating on Lehner. No.
I think he's allowed to be frustrated when 2 guys are parked right in front of him and everybody else is standing around.
So all you guys say I love Thomas Greiss, and I don't love Thomas Greiss. But that goes back to when Greiss and Lehner were goalies there, and I said that I thought that Greiss deserved a little bit more.
If Lehner were 15-1, you would find problems with him.
I don't like Grice over Varlamov, so that's like ridiculous. Okay.
Okay. Well, at least you see that.
Obviously, the Grice love comes from the Leonard issue, and I'm not completely anti Robin Leonard either. I'm just saying that in that game, if I'm Vegas, I take some. You have to look at Leonard's reactions. Having watched Leonard for years in different situations, when he reacts, like when he starts yelling at his teammates around him and stuff like that after goals, is when Robin Leonard starts to lose it. Okay. Now I'm not saying he's lost it yet, but Joe, you're shaking your head a little bit with me. Do you get this?
Joe,
I completely get where you're coming from here. And my reaction when I saw that goal was like, well, I bet he hasn't seen something like that since he was in Buffalo. And that's
right.
Probably the case.
That's fair.
Right.
I've seen enough of that reaction out of him before. It happened. It happened when he played for Sweden. It happened everywhere along the road. But you're right. Like the mental game for him, and I'm not getting into his personal stuff, but focus on the ice.
Yeah.
When he's shaking, and if he doesn't trust the guys in front of him, boy, oh boy, it's going to get hard. And I think it's up to those defensemen to kind of earn back his trust in the next game to take care of the net around him, clear some of these guys out. I mean, Robin wants to see the shots, but he doesn't want a 2-on-0 in front of him from 5 feet out.
Right. And of course, any goalie would be frustrated, but every goalie wouldn't react the way he does. And every goalie wouldn't also have that reaction matter in the future, which is what Robin Leonard tends to do. He's a streaky goalie, and when he's on, he's on.
So you're saying he's going to lose next game?
My feeling is you have to be very I would go with Fleury next game. That's my opinion.
No, but if Leonard's in next game, because it's not going to be Fleury, you're saying Leonard's going to lose next game.
I'm saying you got to keep. I'm not saying he's going to lose. What I'm saying is you have to sit back and you have to say to yourself, you have to keep an eye on this kind of stuff. Like this kind of stuff, you have to keep an eye on. If you want to try to like be a Robin Leonard whisperer and see whether or not he is sliding, because you don't want to lose a game because you went to Fleury too late. That's my opinion here. Now, where you can put him out, take him out for a game, and perhaps this whole thing can be forgotten about, and perhaps he goes back to being a better player. I just think this is the perfect situation to play Marc-Andre Fleury in the next game based on what I saw there.
Yeah.
Whether or not they do that, I don't believe they're going to do that though.
Because I think that would be creating a controversy. Because then if you go to Fleury and Fleury
the controvery is already there, Mike. I mean, it's like
I think you're
out of the bag. The sword's out of the back already.
Yeah. Oh my god, yeah, it's beyond the sword thing. I mean, if you want to just search Marc-Andre Fleury on Twitter, you'll see the controversy is very much in reality. Like Vegas fans very much want him in goal. And then ESPN today, there's an article that he's getting treated poorly.
Joe, have you ever seen an agent shoot his client in the foot more and worse than Alan Walsh did with Fleury?
What I've learned about agents when they do brash things, it doesn't usually come out of the blue. I'm positive Fleury's upset that he's not playing. He's prideful, but he's not a guy that's going to stir it up himself. So that's the perfect. Yeah. Having Alan Walsh as your agent in that case makes him the perfect guy because he will rattle the cages. He helped do it with Pacioretty. Helped get Pacioretty out of Montreal. So if you need a guy that's gonna to get it stirred up for you, man, it's the best guy to do it. And I don't know
if you want to get out of a team, you hire Alan Walsh. There's no question.
So here's a better question: does Robin Leonard start changing his mind about wanting to re-sign with Las Vegas if he's going to have to put up with this?
No.
I don't think he's decided he wants to re-sign with Vegas yet. Honestly,
Fleury's only getting older. At this point, I don't know.
Well, we always
goalie. Fleury may be frustrated that he's not playing, but he's not being a jerk to Leonard as a result.
Oh, he's not being a jerk at all. You see the way
goalies don't do that to each other.
Well, some do, but Fleury doesn't. I mean, none of them really do, Russ. But Fleury is particularly a good teammate. Like he is. Yeah. He is, he's above and beyond any of that kind of crap.
I don't think it would
piss him off so much, beyond, which is why it was the wrong, Walsh. Remember, Walsh's history, as obviously is what it is, and then also, the contract Walsh signed with Fleury, I'll never forget this. Like the Penguins, when he first came to the Penguins, the contract that he had him, he couldn't play a certain amount of games or this or whatever. It basically made it so the Penguins couldn't play him. It was like one of the most ridiculous things ever. It's just sometimes Walsh overthinks thinks himself into a corner. This is a situation where he shouldn't have that. I think that people are way too quickly to just hand Robin Leonard the entire team here. I think that this is still they asked the coach. The coach is saying nothing, of course. DeBoer is saying we have a plan. Both goalies are going to play in the playoffs. which makes me think that maybe when they have their back-to-back games, we're going to see Fleury. And those back-to-back games though could change.
You'll see him in a back-to-back, but I don't think DeBoer wants Fleury in there. I just don't.
So officially, their back-to-back games aren't until like the games 5 and 6 or 6 and 7.
That's when you probably see Fleury.
Yeah, but now that could change though. Of course, if their game tonight gets moved to tomorrow,
right?
Then they're back. Then they have a back-to-back.
It could change
unless they're facing elimination. Then you might not.
With an additional day off, it could change all the schedules to eliminate a lot of those back-to-backs.
Yes. Well, it'll add a back-to-back for them, unfortunately. Like it'll add a back-to-back. So basically, because they play Friday and Saturday.
Before we finish the show, I just want to get Joe's input on the big trade of the week, the Kapanen deal to Pittsburgh. It seems to be widely being panned on the part of Pittsburgh, giving up a first-round pick and a pretty decent prospect in Hallander for Kapanen, who we both know, Joe. He's a really talented guy, but hasn't put it all together, and he is 23, going on 24 years old. So it's a little bit of a question mark. What did you think of this deal?
Yeah, I know Kapanen's advanced numbers don't really sparkle very much, but I mean he's a raw talent sort of guy where the speed's great. We know he can score. He can create some goals too.
Yep.
But if you're putting him on a line with Crosby or Malkin, you don't need him to do a lot of that. You just need him to just be fast to help open up some of that space for those guys and to allow them to be creative with him. Now, if he ends up not making it on one of those two lines and he ends up further down the lineup, the Penguins are going to have some other problems. But I think in generally speaking, I mean, this is Jim Rutherford reacquiring a guy that he likes to make it happen and giving up a first round pick. I mean, Pittsburgh's that's his MO. He just hands out these picks like crazy to get the guys that he feels he needs. The comparison always is, are you going to get a guy as good as Kasperi Kapanen with the 15th pick if you keep it? And in this draft, probably. I think you're probably getting a guy that could be for him. And Pittsburgh's not in a wait mode.
Right, but it's 2 or 3 years down the line. And Evan Rodriguez goes to the Leafs, and I know that we both heard rumors of Toronto. At least I heard rumors of Toronto being interested in Rodriguez when he was having his problems with Kruger with Buffalo. The question is, though, they may not qualify him with a $2 million. I think the cap hit will be 2.2 for a qualifying offer. They're not going to offer him that. If he agrees to sign a lower deal, then he probably resigns with Toronto. But if not, he's going to be a free agent. Yeah,
I mean that would be a homer sort of deal for him. I mean he's from the Toronto area, so it's really up to him if he wants to come in at a lower cost. But I think certainly the opportunity to be there in Toronto, because Toronto's gonna have to make some more moves aside from trading Kapanen. But the question is if somebody else is gonna want to add him somewhere else. If he's not qualified, I presume Rodriguez is gonna have a lot of interest around because he's an affordable guy to add and he works hard. I mean, the big comparison a lot of people made with the fancy stats was that Rodriguez and Kapanen's were pretty similar. Granted, Rodriguez did it out of the spotlight of Toronto and in Buffalo, where, let's face it, you're just not going to do that. But if there's a thing to knock on Evan, it's that the goals don't come very often.
No,
but he's a hard worker. He does all the nitty gritty sort of things that you want out of a guy lower in the lineup. But he has some of that offensive touch that if it can be tapped, makes him a really savvy addition to a team.
There you go. Okay. Well, thank you, Joe. That's all the time we have, guys. I'm sure we'll be hearing shortly. It sounds very much like the games won't be happening tonight. So that means that we'll have, I think it's the right decision to make. Like I said, I hope they just say we were wrong. We should have done it last night and just move on. And like you said, Russ, give people a chance to actually talk. Use the time.
Yeah.
Use the time well. I mean, the players obviously don't want to spend another day in the bubble. So the players are making a sacrifice here by this tonight, and they need to use their time. They need to make that known. So we'll be back again tomorrow, though, and it looks like tomorrow we might have like as many as 4 games, which is always fun because I kind of miss the 4-game days. We'll talk about that then when it happens. Remember, folks.